Kieran Hebden, aka Fortet, has always found the beauty in the simplistic and the minimal, as shown by some of my favourite records from him, Pause and Rounds. And on this new album, New Energy, he's pretty much going back to, he's pretty much doing Fortet as it always has been. The stunning track and single 2017 is definitely one of the highlights from this album, with what sounds like a mandolin, I think, ringing over this down-tempo percussion with a faint synthetic bass line as more icy drones sail over the top like gusts of wind. It's breathtaking, to say the least. However, this album doesn't deliver elsewhere when it comes to being consistently engaging, much like the track 2017. Sure, you have cuts like Scientist, where this bouncy synthesizer bass for the track just grabs you, and then you hear these glassy reversed audio clips that really just add to the ambience of the music. It's quite gorgeous. However, later on down the road on this track, other parts like the scatterbrained saxophone solo and the weird chopped up high-pitched singing vocals feel more shoehorned in as opposed to flowing well into the atmosphere of the track. And they leave the emotions of the piece by the end of it rather intangible or harder to connect with, or as if that connection from before was just broken. SW99SL sounds so robotic and spacey, it's almost out of place after the more down-to-earth You Are Loved. And LA Trance is really the one track here towards the beginning where Fortet early on in the record reaches a bit of a stagnation, or a lack of movement forward. And after a stunning grand opening like 2017, the album felt like it was just begging for a track afterwards to keep that momentum going, and LA Trance just doesn't quite deliver on that front. You also have the abundance of rather pointless interludes like Tremper or Gentle Soul or Falls 2, where very little actually happens. Maybe an icy or small drone wafting over, but it's usually so faint that it may as well have not been there at all. Like it was unnecessary for the pacing of the record because everything else was so low-key and minimal anyways. Daughter is by far the most beautiful track on here, front to back, no flaws whatsoever. The chopped up singing vocal is beautiful in how it kind of forms its own groove, and Hebden just subtly builds on it and creates this warm, comforting atmosphere out of it. It's actually one of the first warm tracks on this record, subverting the usual cold and robotic atmosphere of before. And not only that, but after such a long track listing of synthetic sounds, it actually is quite touching to finally hear the first instance of a human voice on this record without any sort of effects on it. Like you've finally come back into contact with humanity. But because the vocals are so chopped up, it's almost as if they're not real, tangible human interactions, and they're more just distant memories of that kind of warmth and love and spirit. The track Lush earlier on in the album is similar in that it really just builds and builds that sense of comfort, except this one is without the human vocal and instead containing one of those pan drums that always sounds so gorgeous when it's on like an ambient styled piece like this. Shout out to the Minecraft soundtrack, and here it's no except. I actually think it gives quite a watery, rainforesty kind of atmosphere. You can even hear what sounds like water trickling in the background. It's chilling and it gets my goosebumps up. I think the closing track could have been a real stunner considering its 7-minute runtime and how it spends a long chunk of that time building up and becoming increasingly more lush as it moves on, but sadly towards the end it all washes away and it leaves you kind of wondering if there could have been a more fulfilling, or at least a fuller conclusion to the album. There are undoubtedly stunners on this album. From a long-time fan of Fortet, I think that there are plenty of moments that do reach a satisfying level, but unfortunately as a collective of tracks this isn't something I'm keen to return to as a whole product. Rather just coming back to those individual particular cuts like 2017 and Lush and Daughter, which for me are the top highlights. I'm feeling a 5 out of 10 on this Fortet album.